Hello, and welcome back to another podcast episode with Brittney Bundles. You are listening to the Brittney Bundles podcast, where we empower people through entrepreneurship. And today, what I'd like to talk about is I'd like to talk about business loans with no credit check. Okay, I did a video like this a few years back, going over my experience obtaining a business loan with no credit check. I will link that video down below. If you're watching here on YouTube, you'll just be able to click that link and go over to that video after this episode. If you're listening on Spotify or a different platform, feel free to toggle over to my YouTube channel to get that link if you're interested in watching this reference video where I go over my experiences. But this is what the podcast is going to be about today. I'm going to ask that you bear with me today because I am sick, so I'm very congested. So if I'm not pronouncing words as clearly as I may pronounce them in prior videos, this is why. It's really uncomfortable to talk, but I do want to make sure we're sticking on schedule and still getting content out to you all. So with that being said, I'm going to ask that you all share the podcast. Sharing the podcast helps it to grow, not just for the channel's sake, not just because of the podcast, but we want the channel to grow because we want to make an impact, and we want to reach as many entrepreneurs and provide resources and experiences that can actually help our entrepreneurial realm. Also, prior entrepreneurs have been on this platform promoting their businesses and also sharing their stories and providing resources and insight on entrepreneurship as a total. So I would love for you to share the episodes so that the prior entrepreneurs and businesses that have been featured on this platform can continue to receive traffic and awareness. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and give you all an opportunity to share. Sharing can be done by via link. It can be done via word of mouth. You can turn on the episode while you're riding in the car with a family member or a friend. Whatever way you feel most comfortable sharing, please do so. And I'll be back in just a moment and we'll get started. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. It truly means a lot. So today, again, we're talking about business loans with no credit check, okay? And I'm going to be including some of the companies that you can go to for these type of options. So this is something that a lot of business owners are interested in, right? How can I obtain funding and financing for my business despite me having not good credit? And so today we're going to really break down what no credit check really means. I'm going to go over some pros and cons and, like I said, actual companies that offer this type of funding. So if you're trying to grow your business but your credit isn't perfect, okay, this video is for you. So before we jump into the list of lenders, let's be super clear, okay? No credit check doesn't mean that they aren't going to be checking anything. I think so many people have that misconception where they hear no credit check, it means, okay, anyone can get the loan. Anyone can get financing. Everyone's approved. And that's just not the case with most lenders. They still are going to check certain criteria to make sure that your risk is worth it for their company. They still have to make sure that they're able to make money back on the money that they're lending you, that you're going to pay them. And no one's ever going to be 100% sure, right? Even with a contract, people don't pay. Even with loan agreements, people don't pay. Or some, I can say some people don't pay. But they still want to make sure that they have some type of criteria where they're mitigating as much loss as they possibly can with no credit check. So they're going to be looking at your business revenue. Okay, how much are you making? Can you afford to pay them back? Are they going to, again, make money off of the money that they're lending you? Another thing they're going to look at is your sales history. So do you have a history of making money? Is this your first year? Have you been in business for over 6 months? That type of thing. They're also going to look at your PayPal or Square transactions. If you're not using like another e-commerce platform, a lot of times they'll look for transaction history. Just like if you go in and apply for a loan at a bank, sometimes they may ask for your monthly statements with the bank. They may want to look back and see your spending habits and see where your accounts are at typically to get a gauge for if they feel like you can pay this loan back if you're a qualified applicant. They're also going to look at some invoices, possibly, and they also may look at your cash flow. Some of the lenders, instead of pulling your personal credit the traditional way, some of them do soft pulls, which won't hurt your score. And then some don't check credit at all. But that usually means higher fees. Again, it's a business, so they're wanting to make sure that they can get as much money back for the money that they're lending you. So a lot of times, if you are going to any of these lenders or you're applying for a no credit loan, their fees will be higher because there is a higher risk, and they want to make sure they're getting their money back as soon as they can. So they're going to have higher fees, which doesn't necessarily scare me off personally immediately if I needed the financing. It just depends on the entire scenario. How fast am I making money? What am I using the funds for? What am I investing in? How much do I anticipate getting off of my investment? Can I afford to make the monthly payment? And am I going to be able to refinance? Am I going to have to stick with this loan for the entirety? Whether it be a 5-year loan or whatever the terms that you agree to, or do I know that I'll be able to get my credit up to a point where I can refinance and not pay that high interest? So it kind of just depends. The first company that I want to talk about is PayPal Working Capital. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I spoke about my experience obtaining a business loan without a credit check, and it was through PayPal Working Capital. So if you are interested in hearing my experience, again, I made this video some years ago. It will be on my YouTube channel. If you're listening on a different platform, toggle over to YouTube when you finish here, and I will have that video linked below this podcast episode. So with PayPal Capital, it's perfect if you already use PayPal for your business sales, which I do. They don't require a traditional credit check. So instead, they approve you based on your PayPal sales history, which again was perfect for me because all I had to do was just go through their application process right through PayPal. They were able to analyze my sales and transactions and qualify me on the spot. So repayments come out as a percentage of your PayPal sales. So if your business slows down, your repayment slows down too, which I enjoyed. You can always pay more, I believe, but typically they just took a percentage out of each transaction. So I just expected that. Whenever I made a sale, they would take money out, and the more sales I made, the faster I made the sales, the quicker the loan was paid off. So this is one of the easiest options for small creators and beauty businesses because so many of us already use PayPal to get paid. And it was very seamless. I think you get the money like within that same day, if I'm not mistaken. The next company I want to talk about is Square Business Loans. So I've never used Square Business Loans, but I did do some research to share with you all how they work. So Square Business Loans are from Block. If you use Square to accept payments for your hair business, beauty products, pop-up shops, Square may pre-approve you right inside your dashboard. This also does not require a personal credit check. So they base approval on Square sales, not your credit. So repayment works the same way. They take a small percentage of your daily sales. So it just depends on what platform the majority of your sales are on. If you're using primarily PayPal, I would go with PayPal Working Capital. If you're using primarily Square, I would go and look at my Square funding options. The third company is Altline. It's ALTLINE, Invoice Factoring. So they're an invoice factoring company, like I mentioned. They don't rely on your credit score either. Instead, they look at your client's credit because you're basically selling them your unpaid invoices. This works if you run a service-based business or do like B2B, business to business work. Altline is good if you have invoices sitting around and you need cash fast. That wouldn't work for me just based on the type of sales that I do typically hair sales, and I do offer services, and I do have memberships, and I have a drop shipping program as well. But I think that I made the best decision by going to PayPal Working Capital based on the type of business that I run, a hair business. The fourth company that I'm going to mention is Giggle Finance, not Google, Giggle Finance. This is for self-employed entrepreneurs and creators. Okay, so they offer revenue-based financing with no hard credit check. It's a small funding option. It's usually a few $1,000s, but it's quick. And for some people, it's the easiest approval. Repayments are daily or weekly, so you just have to make sure that you have revenue to handle that. And then the next company that I'm going to mention is Credibly. So Credibly advertises that applying will not hurt your credit score, which means they probably are doing a soft pull. They offer short-term business loans and merchant cash advances. They're fast and flexible, but make sure you look at the total cost because this option can get pricey depending on your revenue and risk level. Remember, we talked about that risk level a little bit in the beginning of the podcast. They want to make sure, whoever you're going through, that they do as much as they can as far as looking at your revenue, looking at how long you've been in business, looking at your transactions, your cash flow, to make sure that they're mitigating their risk as much as they can. So we're going to talk about some pros and cons really quickly. Pros to looking into financing with no credit check is it's easier access when your credit isn't perfect. You get fast funding, and approval is based on your business activity, not just your score. Some of the cons, like we mentioned, are the higher fees. Okay, a lot of times these companies are going to charge you a higher fee because they know that you have limited options as far as where you can receive your funding. And then also daily or weekly repayments for some lenders, that doesn't work well for some entrepreneurs. They don't want to have to pay daily or weekly on their loan. Some don't report to credit bureaus, so it may not build business credit. And then there's predatory lenders that exist. So stay far away from places that say they are guaranteed approval. That can be a red flag. But it does make sense to look into different funding options when you have a strong, consistent business revenue. You need money quickly. You're using the money to make more money. So looking to make sure that you're not just getting the money because you want to apply, but you're getting it because you actually have a plan for how you're going to invest to make more money back. And then also have a clear plan for your ROI. If you're borrowing without a plan or your sales are inconsistent, this might hurt more than help because you can get yourself in a position where you're trying to dig yourself up out of a hole. So you want to plan before you accept any loan, okay? Ask your lender, is this a soft or hard pull? If it's a hard pull, you know it's going to impact your credit. If it's a soft pull, it's not, or it shouldn't. Ask what the total cost is, know your repayment schedule, and understand how it affects your cash flow. Make sure you can still pay yourself and run your business, and then compare at least 2 to 3 lenders. So just to sum everything up, as someone who runs multiple businesses, I always say, if you're going to use a loan, use it as a tool, not a crutch. If the funding is going to help you make a profitable investment, okay, if you have a plan for why you're taking out the funds, this can be a great move, okay? But if it's just to catch up with no plan, if it's just to get money with no plan, this can, you can sink fast, and it can be a poor decision in the long run. So let me know in the comments what type of funding you're looking for, what business you're growing. If you want me to do a video comparing these side by sides, drop a compare them below. Just say compare them, Brittney. Make sure you like, subscribe, and check the links in the description for business tools if you are watching on YouTube. If you're watching on a different platform, such as Spotify, go ahead and give the podcast episode or the podcast in general a thumbs up. I truly appreciate that. But I have some business tools, my Amazon favorites down below, and I also have that video going over my personal experience obtaining a business loan with no credit check. I want to thank you all for tuning in to the Brittney Bundles podcast. Follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on my page, which is Brittney_bundles. It's BRITTNEY_bundles, BUNDLES. You can follow me on the podcast Instagram, which is Brittney_bundles_podcast. And you can email me if you have any questions at the letter B as in Brittney, talks, TALKS, @yahoo.com. Until next time, I'll talk to you all in the next episode.